Hello, and welcome to the second episode of my Building Vanilla Mechs series. In this video, I'll be taking you through the steps I use to build vanilla AI-controlled arm weapons. So, let's get started. Mech arms can be built in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and how you design them will determine how much articulation they have. Most arms will have at least a shoulder joint and an elbow joint. For me, wrist joints tend to be optional depending on the design, as the extra subgrids can add more wobble and decrease stability. So for now, we'll focus on shoulders and elbows. The best way I've found for making arm joints is to use a combination of advanced rotors and hinges. Using one of each for the arm joints should allow you all of the articulation you'll need in a fairly compact amount of space. We'll also use a pair of custom turret controllers to control the arms using AI, with the option to control them manually. Now, before we go any further, we need to have a little think about our conveyor connections. We need a way to be able to load ammunition into the mech as well as adding some storage space for it. We'll add a conveyor connector and some conveyor tubes. And while we're at it, we can also take this opportunity to adapt our design a little bit and move the reactor to somewhere slightly more useful. Finally, we'll add a couple of conveyor sorters. I like to use sorters where possible because they can double up as both an ammo feeder for your weapons and storage space for them. So we can set them to whitelist to only allow the ammo types we want, and select grain or to automatically arm our weapons even when they're switched off. Once we have a conveyor system that we're happy with, we can move on to the next stage. Now we can start placing our rotors and hinges. The first rotor can be placed facing straight out from the side of the mech, with a hinge facing up and down directly on the end of it. I usually place the rotor with the 0 facing up to make it easier to work out the rotor limits. These two blocks will form the shoulder joints for the arms. Then we can set some rough angle limits and put the shoulder into a resting position. So now we can build our next rotor and hinge to make the elbow joint. We'll place a rotor with the 0 facing forward to make it easier to set up, and another hinge facing up and down. Then we can set some rough angle limits and put the elbow into a resting position. Finally, we can build the weapons we want, and we can add a camera for each arm. And now, on to the next stage. To control the arms, we're going to need a few custom turret controllers. We'll use a pair of them for each arm, one for the shoulder and one for the elbow. Custom turret controllers work by using either a camera or a block weapon as a targeting reference. If the turret has both, it will prioritise the weapon and ignore the camera, and we can use this to our advantage when building arms. So now we can go into the control panel and set them up. In the shoulder controller, we can select the shoulder hinge in the azimuth position to make the top half of the arm move side to side. Then we can select the shoulder rotor in the elevation position to make the top half of the arm aim up and down. Then we can set up the velocity multipliers so that the shoulder moves in the correct directions at a nice speed. And finally, we can set up the arm cameras. But we won't need to add the weapons to the shoulder controllers. This way we can avoid both controllers fighting over the same weapon and prevent any unwanted behaviour. Next, in the elbow controller, we can select the elbow rotor in the azimuth position to make the bottom half of the arm move side to side. Then we can select the elbow hinge in the elevation position to make the bottom half of the arm aim up and down. Then we can set up the velocity multipliers so that the elbows move in the correct directions. And finally, we can set up the arm cameras and the arm weapons. This way, we can use the elbow controllers to operate the weapons manually, while the shoulder controllers provide us with a little bit of aim assist. Now we should have some basic AI-controlled arms. We can move on to the next stage. When building any kind of custom turret, the best way I have found of testing its targeting angles and tracking speed is to turn on the AI control and set the turret controller to target only players and friends. Now we can use ourselves as a moving target and check how well the arms move around. The first thing you'll probably notice is that the arms are incredibly wobbly. This is where shear inertia tensor and adjusting our torque settings and RPM settings will come in handy. So if we add shear inertia tensor to both of the arm hinges and the elbow rotor, the arm should become a lot more stable. Do not add it to the first shoulder rotor, as this will only make the arm ridiculously heavy. We can further increase its stability by reducing the torque settings in the rotors and hinges, and the velocity multipliers in the torque controllers if needed. However, if we reduce them too much, the arms won't be strong enough to support their own weight. And once we're happy with how the arms move around, we can move on to the next stage. Now that we have some arm weapons that can aim at targets, we'll probably want a way to control them and a way to turn them on and off. First, we'll make the on and off switch, and for the sake of space we'll use a single timer block that we can add to our toolbar. So we'll add a timer, go into the control panel and click on Setup Actions. First we'll add the turret controllers and choose Enable AI on and off for each one. This way they will be the first thing to turn off and prevent any conflict with some of the later commands. Then we'll add the arm weapons and cameras and choose Toggle Block on off. And finally we can add all of our arm rotors and hinges and choose the Set Velocity action. We can go through them one by one and set them all to move into their resting positions. This will reset the arms to their default positions when the AI control is deactivated, so long as we place the rotor and hinge commands after the turret controller commands. Make sure all of the turret AI, weapons and cameras are switched off so that they all trigger correctly before you test the on-off control. Now when we trigger the timer, the turret AI should take control of the rotors, hinges and weapons. And when we trigger it again, the turret AI and weapons should turn off and the rotors and hinges should reset to their default positions. You can even build some lights or LCDs to indicate when the arm weapons are active and add them to the timer block as well. Now we can add the on-off timer to the control seat toolbar and choose the Trigger Now action to activate and deactivate our weapons. We can also add the two elbow controllers and choose the Control action to manually control each arm. And now we should have a set of arm weapons that can be turned on and off and reset to their default positions. They should also be AI controlled by default, with the option to control them manually. And one last thing we can do is set up the arms so that they swing in time with the walk cycle. This will actually help to keep the mech balanced and give it a more natural looking walk animation. So we can quickly go back into our control panel, go to the first event controllers in our walk controls and click on Select Actions. Then we can select our shoulder rotors, choose the Set Velocity action and set an RPM that pushes the arms forwards when the legs move backwards, and vice versa. In this example we'll use 6 RPM in either direction. Once we've done this for both arms, we should now have a smoother and more balanced walk cycle. And because we're using the new Set Velocity controls, the arms should return to their walk cycle controls when the arm AI is deactivated. And that's about it for building basic mech arm weapons. In the next episode I'll go into some more advanced systems like AI and remote operation controls. So thanks for watching and goodbye for now.